Hello. We're doing the mask thing today. It is pretty spooky weather, I'm going to be honest. The weather's pretty bad in the state, so I am trying to be as thoughtful as possible about it right now, but this is not, it's just not a good time to be in this particular state. May I reserve to the usual shenanigans. Sure why, but whatever. Someday I'll stop having such a big fan club following me around. We got some relaxing music on that I believe is not copywritten. Just getting situated here. Let's see. So, it's been a interesting couple of days. I have been dealing with some of the fallout from again, the weather's just been shit. I've been mostly hunkered down for the past couple of days. I felt terrible. I felt really bad. I wanted to stream yesterday, but it just seemed like a really bad idea to do so with the, I think the AQI peaked at around like, I don't know, I want to say like, 110 or something like that. And I mean, 50 is hazardous, right? Whatever they tell you. Doesn't matter how good your lungs are, if you got any issues, that's just not safe. Not safe weather to be outside. And for whatever reason, I don't know if this apartment building is especially drafty or whatever, but I mean, it's pretty poor. The air quality in here is pretty bad. I went through a pretty heavy-duty air filter that's supposed to last really long, and it didn't last very long at all. So I'm a little concerned and just trying to figure out what the game plan for that's going to be. Otherwise, it's been pretty great. Just kind of get a little tired of other people, but I don't really I don't really understand why people have so much interest in me, so. Kind of just rather be alone most of the time. I don't know. It's if I could be somewhere else, I would at this point, but I don't think I can afford anything that's got like legitimate privacy to it. So I'm going to be stuck in apartments for probably most of the time. Probably for a while. Just doing some warm-ups right now. One sec here. Scooch up. My friend got me, after years and years and years of searching, we finally found something affordable that was basically new, so we got a new gaming chair now, which has really just changed my life because my back was in really bad shape beforehand. Now it's doing a lot better, fortunately. So, anyway, we are working on some warm-ups and stuff here, keeping things nice and loose. Thought I'd have a little bit more energy when I actually got to this, but right now we are just making moves at the moment. I did want to get a little bit into the controller conversation a bit, just because I've kind of got a lot of thoughts about it. I just don't really see anybody else talk about. And finally, Mono, who I mean, I just feel like I owe him something. Don't really care if he likes me, because I kind of gave up on the community. I don't think anybody likes the community anymore, but yeah, so I just I don't know, I wanted to shout him out here. He's actually currently interviewing Tyler Swift, who is probably the most relevant Pikachu aside from Axe in the game. There's definitely some I mean, it's becoming an increasingly crowded field, which is actually really good. I think J-Chew is pretty definitively like on the come up at this point, and it's pretty exciting, to be honest. Sorry. The mask behind the glasses, because the glasses keep fogging up, which is getting kind of annoying. See, honestly, the big thing about what I've been trying to do with the practicing right now is get used to this chair, because I haven't really sat in anything that's actually been designed to be comfortable in a long time. So I'm like, I just have more energy. It's crazy. I don't hurt. Play this game for longer. It's kind of insane. It's been a huge boon to me. I'm not gonna sit for the company. I don't really care. I hear a lot of people have pretty strong opinions about gaming chairs, so I'm not really gonna like. I found a chair that works for me, you know. I think that's more important than anything else. Sometimes you find a rocking chair or a wooden chair that's just perfect. But for me, unfortunately, I guess I have to get this slightly goofy looking thing, but it does make me feel very official. So a little bit out of sync here, a little bit out of whack. But like basically being able to sit in a symmetrical fashion sounds kind of insane, but that's been a pretty big difference too. So just making sure that my body is like equal on the ground, that's made a huge difference too. Stuff like that is just nice, you know. I didn't really like put this out too aggressively on a lot of the different Discords and stuff that I'm a part of, because I just kind of want to play, hang out, do this kind of for me, because I feel like I need to be doing this about once every 2 days. I guess this is just the one song, but it's pretty nice right now. I don't know how loud this is on the OBS actually. That's super loud. So we're gonna turn that down a bit here. Yes. A little bit louder in my headphones. That should help out. Let's get this to the old playback. Live playback. I feel like I should refresh chat, but that's alright. But yeah, Taylor Swift is just kind of one of the more prominent Pikachu voices out there, and I mean, literally, like he actually talks quite a bit about it. He's a pretty open guy, which is nice. You just, I mean, it's kind of one of those things, like a lot of stuff in the community. Most people are actually pretty willing to talk if you just like talk to them, you know. Not like that's like some big revelation or anything. I just feel like a lot of times people feel like certain information is more hidden than it is, you know. Oops. Yeah, he's a really oops. Oh, fuck. Nah. He's a really prominent player, and I know one friend who's also a Pikachu player who's just basically says he's perfect Pika. And I'm a big fan basically because I don't think at all like him. I think it's really interesting to watch him play because he only ever goes for options and choices and stuff like that I would actually never go for, not in a million years. So it's really, I mean, again, it's part of the reason that it's kind of exciting to have someone like that on the community. And he's also a box player, so I did want to say, just first off, I really don't care or have a big foot in the race about what modifications actually end up happening with controllers and stuff. The big thing for me is literally just like people don't get scammed. And I feel like at this point, I think the bigger question is now, for a lot of these controller modifications, are they really worth it? Is this really worth the time or energy? Because I apparently was pretty on point with my prediction. Not to toot my own horn, I apologize, but I remember seeing Spark, excuse me, I don't know him that well. I remember seeing Spark talk about his controllers, and you know, seeing Zane buy them, and I thought, well, if Zane's buying them, I mean, shit. And all it really was just a nice, modest OEM out of the box that had been tinkered with a little bit to make it really sing. And I gotta hit the L cancel with it. I mean, I guess technically I don't have to keep, well, if I hit the fast follow, that's right. But anyway, with the OEM thing, it just kind of seems like more and more people are just kind of going for that now, just a very standard OEM thing. For me, it kind of confused me because a lot of the conversation, like a lot of it, like was talking about wear and tear for OEM and all that stuff, and I never really found OEM to be something that, for me personally, was like, I don't feel like it, for me, it never felt like it was wearing that fast. Now, I'm not someone who's, I play maybe 2 to 3 hours a day right now, which is about as much as I can handle without like literally dying. Hey, what's up, Suki? Appreciate you stopping by. Just doing some I appreciate that, thank you. You never have an obligation to be here, but it is always really nice to see you. Makes me feel a little more cozy, you know. But I'm just doing some talking about the controller discourse right now, so feel free to throw any thoughts if you have them. But I guess Aklo posted a comment just about like sorry, Suki SJ also streams on Twitch. I think it's the same name, right? So please go check them out too. I think this is like my second mod or something that I've actually been like, let's have a real deal let's have a real deal mod. So I really appreciate them for offering their time for that. So just go give them a. I'm gonna shout you out. Deal with it. Sorry. But anyway, let me get my brain back on track. And yeah, so I wanted to talk a little bit about just like. So Akla made a post about notches and stuff like that, right? Saying that one of the big things about notches is that they cause a lot of wear and tear in controllers because they will, I'm assuming just very practically, something like that, where you know you see the big dagger cuts in here. Something like this is gonna probably last for a pretty hot minute, but if you start working the plastic around there, I think also probably, I'm not a big expert with. I'm probably going to say a lot of stuff that sounds kind of stupid, just FYI, because I'm not a big expert on materials and things like that. So just full disclosure, they were just some thoughts that I had about, like, again, it's just stuff that I haven't seen people talk about. Anyway, but I'm sure, like, if you're wearing down the plastic around here, it's probably loosening the durability of the plastic around the rest of this. And that was, it just made me think a little bit about what do people in the community actually want their controllers to do? Because I feel like at this point, you know, we have people who can play this game on a cardboard box, you know. So what do people want from the inputs in this game? And for me, I'm a little bit torn as to what the actual best idea would be. Now, also, I just want to say to you, I have nothing against fobs. I think OEM works better, so I use an OEM. I have heard a lot of people who say fobs work better, and I think they should use fobs if they think they work better. I got no issue with that at all. And I also really think boxes are good. And the reason I think boxes are good is just because, for me, being on the bottom, not really having, I'm not gonna be someone who's making a lot of money doing this ever. So for me, the big thing would be accessibility. I want the most amount of people to play this game as possible. That is my personal priority as in the very, very small community. That is my very modest assertion about what I think the controller should have. And the thing is that what the community wants? And that's kind of where I feel like there's some question, because I feel like a lot of people are kind of at the point where they're saying, if we're not using, you know, out of the box material, this really isn't fair. And I'm wondering about that, and I have a couple different reasons why I think accessibility, I think to me also accessibility means a lot more than just having a type of tool for everybody. It also means like people who don't have a lot of money can get stuff. So, you know, I was joking with some people a while ago. You know, I was joking with some people. So again, I'm reading it. I'm just gonna finish my thoughts and then we'll get to what you're saying. So, but I know, for me, like I was joking with some friends, you know, if someone gets the silver one on Slippy, we should just send them one of Spark's controllers, right? Like that's, like why the hell not, right? If we really want this to be an even playing field, and that's never going to happen, and of course it's not going to happen. That's not a very good idea. But I don't see another way to make it so that everything is completely flat like that, right? If you can't do that, so. And I've talked to a lot of the other people who are into controllers and stuff, and it's tricky for them too, because I mean, honestly, one of the things I think is interesting about most box players is they're actually the people who are most willing to talk about what the box is too good at doing, right? And also just to get to, you're kind of getting into what I'm think about talking. So my personal thought is I am mostly for software modding, like button mapping. However, my biggest issue is mods like that will screw us over with Nintendo. From the arguments I've seen, box can do what GC can't, but even so, it's not like it's unbeatable. Yeah, and those are two really good points too. And that's the thing with like button mapping too. It's like that stuff's really easy on on fob. If you want to do it on OEM, it's, I think, cheap. It's like a $10 fix and just a little bit of soldering or something. But you can rewire them. And shoot, thought I was going to say more stuff about that. I'm doing my best. It's been a while. Sorry. I'm really trying to get some good content out here, but one of the things that was interesting about button mapping then was just seeing how vehemently people were. I mean, so I don't know if it's. Another thing about button mapping is I don't know if people don't like button mapping or they just don't like Cody, right? Because Cody is the Z jump guy right now. He's the guy who's doing that. I switched to claw recently, and how I have the like this right now, which seems to work okay for me. I've never really tried to experiment with Z jump, but a lot of people have said that they feel like it's it's an issue in the play style, right? So I have to be very honest. If I think boxes are allowed, I can't say that this is wrong. And the other thing too is I think at any point in time I can't really say that any particular controller modifications. And like you're saying, like before, like Suki says, before fob I got a snapback modifier to reduce snapback. I don't see that being dislodged. Exactly right. I don't think getting the what do they call them, the heartbeat capacitors or whatever. Those things too. I mean, even honestly, like where would you put taking the stick out and replacing it with another stick, right? Like at that point, like how dense and deep does this conversation go? So to me, how I've been kind of thinking about this is more about what does the community want the controllers to do, right? Because it seems like a lot of to me it seems a little confusing, right? Because okay, so a lot of people don't like boxes, right? Boxes are overpowered. Okay, so where are the results? I let me check top 10 right now. I'm gonna see current ranking. Oh, that's Zane is already above Cody for the summer rankings. That's super funny. So it's Zane, Cody, Mango, Amsa, Jmook, Hungrybox, Smokey, Wizrobe, Sunsei, and Triff. Unless I'm mistaken, I believe Sunsei is a GameCube controller player as well. So to me, and that's not. I need more than boxes are overpowered verbal arguments than that, right? I don't buy that, because I think if it was really a problem, it would be like any other of the Smash games, where after about 6 months you'd see top 8s where there would be one person with a controller and it would be 7 boxes, right? I'm just thinking back to Ultimate, where Ultimate, you know, when it had Smash 4 when it had issues with Bayonetta or something like that, or right now you could argue, I'm not going to get into the argument with Steve, but you do see a lot of Steves in top 8, right? And it's something that people gravitate towards quickly because it's the best thing to do. I would need, boxes have been around for a hot minute now, you know, I've never seen a player who played box that I felt like was putting less work into the game. I think they put different work into the game, because a lot of what they're talking about is firmware and modifications and how you set the buttons up to do certain specific stuff. But at the end of the day, I can't even really tell if I'm fighting someone at my level right now that are playing box either. And that's the other thing too, is like I feel like if it was really, really, I think you would kind of definitively be able to feel and sense what was happening. Again, low-level player, so that's I think that's obviously really argumentative. But basically, for me, I think at the end of the day, with that argument, I just need more. Where's the evidence for it? And I just don't really see it. I think, and I just. like I don't want to be a jerk here. Like I want to be sympathetic to the requests of top players, but I just don't see results that are matching this idea that it's something that's prohibitively making the game worse for people who are playing on GameCube controller. Because to me, the game is too fast. I think you could play this game with your brain, and it would still be too. There would still be like input lag and stuff like that. I think it's just a really quick game. So I don't. It's just really hard for me to feel. Because the other thing too is like, and this is my personal opinion. I've never seen someone use a box where I thought their movement was as slick as analog control. That's my opinion. I've heard a lot of different people about that, and I don't really want to make this a situation where I'm like shit talking box players. But to me, what that says is that from the outside looking in, that a lot of the issues and struggles in what you get and what you don't get are going to, you're giving and taking stuff, right? Which is why I kind of say that I think most box players work about as hard as GameCube controller players to get this stuff all figured out. And also I think a lot of them are operating under the idea that, one, it might go away at any second. They might get banned. You just don't know. And two, regardless of bans, they're going to be nerfed, right? So if they're going to be nerfed, I feel like because Melee is a game that for the most part doesn't have patches, right? So being someone in this position, we were playing in a box that you have to adjust firmware and stuff. If certain things, like I know someone was talking about a Pika thing that was they banned because he couldn't do it on a GameCube controller or something, and then someone did do it on a GameCube controller, but it was still banned. It's just some BS kind of stuff here. So, like I just don't see that happening. So that's one of the things that kind of keeps. That's where I kind of take pause and why I kind of pull back with the whole conversation and say, well, let's stop talking about it from a perspective of like what is and isn't gonna, what people are and are not going to be using, because it seems like it doesn't really matter what you use, not from my perspective. So I think at this point, for me, the question is more, what does the community want to prioritize? And that's something that I don't really know. And I think that's why a lot of these conversations about the controllers feel a little bit open-ended and don't really have an endpoint to them, right? Because I don't know how you can change the view of the entire community to fit into one single section of what the inputs in this game should or should not be. I also think that with controller mods, as Suki said, that there might be issues with Nintendo. Again, from my perspective, I personally believe that if Nintendo was going to do something about controller mods to that degree, they probably would have done something by now. I kind of have a suspicion with Nintendo that they're going to throw paper. Questions well from Fops in the same case, but I'll get this. Shoot, I lost my train of thought with that one. That's fine. What Suki was saying, you could argue changing GameCube stick with nunchuck stick would be modifying because it's a longer stick that doesn't get ruined over time. Yeah, right. Yeah, actually, I know a lot of people who. Yeah, that's a pretty common. Yeah, that's a really common mod actually too. And that's a good. Like, is that how broken is that? And another good question. One good question as well for fobs in the case button mapping. How would you tell fobs were banned? Excuse me, if fobs were banned, then you would have to open your GameCube before every tournament, or you'd have to use the honor system, which I don't think would work when money. Right, exactly, yeah. Especially, well, not just money, but also like, let's be real, we know this community, right? I'm actually more surprised that there hasn't been some sort of cheating controversy in this game. I'm super sorry. I know that's such a mean thing to say, but you know how cutthroat people in this community will get. Even without money, and then you put money on the line, they get even crazier, right? We see that all the time with multiple tournaments now and stuff like that too. Not naming names or anything, but I mean, it's a very common story to see people kind of like, bite off more than they can chew or something like that. And that was one of the other conversations that came up with people who were using the boxes, is I just literally, and that was something they were talking about, was like, what if you just put a little button on the bottom or a switch that just changed the firmware? Because you could totally do that, right? Yeah, we know. So, what Suk actually, that's a pretty good point too, because I feel like going into the cheating conversation, that shows some of the reasons I don't feel like it seems like cheating hasn't been a big deal, and the reason I think that is because this is, I think, the only really prominent story of cheating that I can think of in Melee. Like there's been unsportsmanlike conduct that's caused bans, and there's been stuff that people have done that have been very shitty, but I think this is the only open admission of like someone has like effectively broken and modified the game when they weren't supposed to. So what had happened was that there was a single local, and there was a Pichu player who was kind of running through everybody, and everybody was surprised, mostly because Pichu, especially at the time when that was happening, which was like 7-8 years, maybe even 10 years ago now. It's been a while, but Pikachu, even nowadays, Pichu is solidly a low tier character. Definitely got, if you were buying stock, I'd say maybe buy a little Pichu stock, because it's definitely. Oops. Oh, sorry, I just got. YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. I don't know what that means. So if the video suddenly looks like crap, I'm sorry. I'll try to check my channel quick and see what's happening. Sometimes YouTube gets a little bit spicy. We'll see if oh, sorry. I have 2 audio training. Alright, yeah, that's probably. Sorry about that. I am still learning a little bit about. Yeah, it's switched back to excellent. Okay, sorry about that, everyone. Anyone who's streamed, just obviously streaming is always really tough. YouTube does not make it easy for you. So I definitely, there's things that I really like about YouTube actually, but stuff like this. The last time that Suki actually was in my particular stream, I had to refresh the chat several times just to see what they were saying. So, but yeah. So anyway, Pichu player at a local, doing great, kicking ass. Someone did some analysis or just recorded some video and was like, these percents something's not right with the hits and stuff like that. The thing you got to understand about Melee players too is a lot of them are really into stats. A lot of stat nerds in the community, which is pretty cool, I think, to be honest, because numbers are a lot of numbers fans, right? So it's definitely one of the few communities where even at a local, you could kind of expect someone to just look at some tape and just be like, well, that's kind of odd, because again, people just love numbers. It might not even be something they just, and this guy's going to get checked out of it, because if you're a Pichu player doing well, that doesn't just happen, right? And it turned out that the guy had actually modified the game, and here's the thing though. So how he had done it was, sorry, it's kind of funny that it was probably pretty obvious at the local, because apparently he had to ask people to use his specific setup, and then there was a trigger that he would use on the screen because his particular setup was modified. So it wasn't the controller either. It was actually the GameCube itself that it had been modified. And he would like press a button combination or something. This is explained in more depth in other places. And he would be playing a Pikachu that had more power than it should. And I remember the funny thing about it too was, I think they talked to him and he was like, I just kind of did it to see if I could do it. Just kind of like, all right, bud. But going back to what I was saying originally, so I mean, from the outside looking in, it's because that's a pretty good amount of work to put into the whole grift, right? Like that's not happening at even a reasonably attended, bigger local, regional, whatever. That's not going to happen, right? So, what do you? So, if cheating is that hard at the game, because it kind of seems like it is, it's hard for me to feel like there's been this situation where it would be causing problems. And that's one of the big concerns people have with the controller modifications too, right? Like you're saying, you know, we got to use the honor system. Well, where are the stories of people playing with clearly, like, where's that happening right now? Because you could put macros and stuff, but even if you have like crazy macros for perfect wave dashes and stuff, you still have to play the game. And it does, at the end of the day, seem like there really isn't a way to shortcut playing the game. So that's why I keep coming back to the idea of what is the community's priorities with controllers then. And I still don't really think that there's a clear answer for that. Do they want a level playing field? Because that's not really going to happen with boxes and fobs, and you know, with all three things happening. They're all such different tools. And not just that they're such different tools, but you know, even me, someone who's trying to be pretty apathetic about a lot of the intricacies of controller stuff, I've had to learn a little bit about electronical stuff just to not check this one, but I've checked electronical stuff, circuitry and wiring, just to make sure that not this one, but a different controller was up to snuff. And for me, buying the controller from Spark was about peace of mind too. It was about saying like, okay, so this is the controller that Zane uses. So if I go to the guy that's doing the best player in the world and using what he uses, at the very least, on my own, I can see what quote unquote a decent feeling controller is, right? And out of the box, and even still today, I don't really see how it could feel much better than it does. Especially now that it's worn pretty comfortably, and I, you know, the buttons are pretty loose and everything's where I really like it. And this is, and I've had it now for a year and a half, I think, maybe a little bit longer, and it's been through the move, it's been through a lot of it's been dropped a bunch. I don't take the best care of it, and it still really plays like a dream. I'd still travel with it and anything. I don't think I would feel, I never feel like I'm losing inputs or anything with it. So I don't really, so fobs to me don't make a lot of sense, but I also don't think that there's anything inherently wrong with fobs. Like, I don't see why. And it also, to me, I feel like fobs are a good way for the community to keep having some power, right? Because none of us oh, it was a OEM, original GameCube. This is the Spark, who's the Sheik main. I think he was ranked 12th. Zane had made a post basically saying, I buy 4 modified controllers from Spark at a time. And I was like, sold. And I had actually been at a place that had housed Spark, I think 6-7 years ago, purely by happenstance. Spark and Kage. I actually fishbowled in my car driving Kage back from one of the locals. It was one of the high points of my life. I was really happy about that. Sorry, anyway. But I was like, okay, so I got an easy in with them too, just like I kind of know them a little bit. And they're also, by the way, Spark is one of the nicest people I've interacted with in the community. Super respectful. The back and forth was really nice too. Always gonna just say really nice stuff about them. But yeah, so they've been buying, I guess they buy like crates of just standard OEMs from Japan. Apparently the Japanese quality is just higher than the quality that you might get in the States or something like that. They just buy crates of them, and then they put, I guess what I would say is a pretty modest tricking out. So I guess these get lubed, triggers get, springs get cut. There's a heartbreak capacitor. There's some other stuff in here too. I actually kept the box because anytime he delivered, when you get the box that's delivered, he says to and your name, and then it's made with love from Zane, and it's really nice, and you can kind of feel some of the love. And there's some other stuff in there too, but it's basically let's see if I can find the actually, I'll find the post for you because I think you'll have more opinions about it, because I know you do know this stuff pretty well. One second here. But I thought it was a smart idea. The other thing too is at the time I had just moved into a new apartment, from being homeless for 5 years. So I kind of wanted something special for myself at that point. I thought it was about the best moving present I was going to get. Let's see. Oops, not saying. See my remedial ability to do this. But yeah, and one of the things that I also thought was nice about that was basically being able to hear, like, okay, so, you know, if oh, sorry, I'm running across a man. I don't know if I can post a link in here or not, but if you can see that, I really want that one. But yeah, I thought it would just be a really solid solid investment, and it's really been just great. Okay. Cardano X and Y, no reset capacitor, modular. Well, here, let me put the thank you, Suki. Sooks. I'm probably gonna be calling you whatever HJ calls you for a hot minute. Sorry about that. But yeah, so you can see here, and just for people, if you're watching the VOD for some godforsaken reason, and you've gotten this part, listen to me like literally just ramble, but what it says is it's a brand new Ultimate Black, which probably isn't that exciting, but they're all from Japan. I do know for a fact that stuff that gets sent to America tends to have a pretty marked drop in quality, in build or whatever too. So that's just something I want to point out, that I do think that getting them from Japan is probably better. Cardano X and Y, no reset capacitor module, S2D-R4 space LF-G. I don't totally know what that means, but I know the X and Y buttons feel really nice. Even having been used pretty frequently now, they're really loose, and they still feel really. I mean, I like really loose buttons, but I'm really happy with them. Heartbreak fixes on both the analog and the C sticks, which I can look at a different Twitter post. Oh, I don't really like them, but they explain what they are. Basically, it's 50 cents of capacitors you put on the back of the. I'm gonna share the post. I'm dumb. Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. I think we'll stick with Suki for now. Something comes up, but naturalistically it will. But I also posted that one. I am not a big fan of this particular creator, just because I feel like they lead into some of the issues I have with fobs. But they do know what they're talking about for the most part. And this is literally the blueprint for how to make these heartbreak monitors, or heartbreak capacitors, heartbreak fixes, whatever. Sorry. And then finally, the last thing is the loop triggers. So right now he's asking for, I think it says 160 on this post, but I do believe he switched it to 180. And then you got to pay for shipping. So for me, that was overall 200. And then I actually conned him out of some pizza money when he stayed over. So, so I paid him back for that too. So for me, it was 220. And it's one of the best purchases I ever made in my life, right? I'm really happy with it. And I think that's actually the reset capacitor for sticks. I said I used X and Y is the axis, and Cardano is created and stuff. Yeah. Yeah, and they work. I think they work really well, because I think I would say for me, I never noticed the controller, and that's really what you want to be hearing, right? The only time I've ever had issues with it is sometimes when my hands are really greasy, the triggers would just get too much. I mean, that's just going to happen too. And obviously it's got some, I could probably replace the analog stick at some point in time, but you know, the thing still works really, really well. But yeah, so that's kind of the roundup of what that, and I've never felt like getting a different controller would make things better for me at this point. Maybe I've definitely thought when I've looked into a little bit more money about investing in another Spark controller, but I don't think that's gonna happen anytime too soon. And I'm not one of those people who wins a lot of giveaways, so I'm not expecting to get another one from them. But yeah, and so for me, the big thing that I've seen part of the community that's caused me issues with controller conversation then is just a lot of builders who are making stuff that I feel like isn't very good quality, and then passing it off as being good quality, right? There's definitely people that I can think to. I think people know that I've literally just called out a couple of controller makers, and also because I knew that people in the community had basically been pretty open about their feelings about them. One sec. Reset capacitors are also really easy and simple to change if you ever have a screwdriver. So even if your sticks get worn, just up the percent. Yeah, definitely. I'm super scared to open this controller because I feel like all the magic's gonna fall out of it, but it is something I'm gonna do eventually. I also have another controller that's I want to shout out the local controller guy here, La Monster from Minnesota. Does great work, super nice guy. Like refused payment a couple times, just a homie. And I don't want to say any of this like dissing on. Also, by the way, I think it's really important to support your local controller guys too, your controller gurus. You probably know who the good people and the people who might not be so good are. Someone like La Monster, I think, is one of the good guys, and I really appreciate the work that he did for me too. So I don't want to like go on into anything with that. It's just that there was a point where the stick box was jangling around. It was too much. And after that point, I got Sparks controller, and I've literally never felt like I needed to get anything done to it or another one. So, but yeah, so that's when in doubt, Etsy 24/7. Oh yeah, I want to get some nice buttons someday too. Switch those out. Some kind of fancy. I don't know. I've also been looking at there's this shell that's like looks like it's a wood grain shell that I really want to get someday. Just stuff like that. But yeah. But for me, honestly, that's really the only thing that I have about the controller conversation that I think is like the priority. And I think that's the thing where I get frustrated with some of the conversation, because it doesn't really seem to relate too much to like making sure that we have nicely vetted products, right? You know, people are used to word of mouth, I think, right now, but my concern is always going to be someone who's coming into the scene at the bottom, going on Twitch, going on Twitter for the first time. So much of Melee right now is discussed in back rooms, and I feel like that can hurt people sometimes, because a lot of times people just don't know what is and isn't good. And that's, to me, so when I talk about having issues with what alternative controllers bring to the community, it's not really because I think they're bad. I think fobs are great. And I mean, again, like I'm saying, there's going to be a point when Nintendo stops making OEMs, you know, whether we want to admit it or not. You know, eventually the sun will die, right? So having a practical, useful second tool that we can have, where we don't have to be worrying about, you know, finding someone who's hoarding these boards in, basically. I think putting more power into the player's hands is always going to be really important. And I feel the same way with boxes too, to be honest. And I think boxes, being someone with a bad back, and beyond that, knowing that boxes can tend to run a lot cheaper than fobs or controllers, where you can get a simple kit for like $15 and then just cut holes in that cardboard box and you're done. Knowing those kind of things, to me, those all sound like great things, to be honest, because I like the idea that this can be a cheap, accessible game. Again, I kept coming back to the ideas of accessibility, right? I think if accessibility is really important, all kinds of accessibility are important then, right? It shouldn't, you know, if you play this game, I don't want people to look at this game and be like, oh, I don't have enough money for you know, I didn't have $200 to get, I mean, I understand that this is for a casual this is a little unreasonable, right? I get that. And I think a lot of the times what people are getting sold is the idea is that they need that really nice fob, or they need that really nice OEM, or they need that really nice box from this particular creator or that particular creator. And that's just where I take issues with the whole situation, because I don't want to see people get exploited, and I think that's a really common issue in the community. I think there's a lot of pretty open grifters, and I think there's a lot of people who one of the other common things that came up, I'm not going to mention creator names, but something that came up was basically someone who was a box player saying, like, of course this fob modifier is going to say this about I'm doing a bad job of this particular controller maker is going to have a perspective because they're getting literally paid by people to make controllers from that perspective, right? And that is kind of the thing that I keep seeing coming back over and over again, where this discussion gets brought up, and then a lot of people who are like, but wait, I kind of want to make it clear that what I'm doing is the right, efficient, correct, best choice kind of thing. And that's what I kind of want to see stop, and that's kind of what I want to talk. That's kind of what I want to see the community actually really address then with the controller. Okay. Sorry, the stream just dropped out and dropped back in again. Sorry about that. I don't know why this almost never had any issues today. I'm assuming it got a little pixelated again, but if anything dropped out, please let me know. But yeah, we should be back to normal in a couple seconds here if it's just the same as last time. I will close Discord right now, just see if that helps. But yeah, so that's something that is, for me, part of the discussion then on accessibility. Refresh and find super, thank you, appreciate that. But that's the thing for me, is like on accessibility, on an even playing field, all that stuff. Like, you got to take into account that not everybody's going to be able to afford a Spark controller. You got to be able to take into account not everybody's going to be able to get. I think Leffen got a box that had gold inlaid with it or something. I always think about the when they were still using broom waves, when Pluff got his specially modified controller that was like made out of tin or something, like the shell was made out of tin, and then when the person who had to like get the notches in it and everything done, it had to be like specialty done and stuff like that. First time the shell didn't even, just all this stuff, and it's not like any of that stuff's bad. It's just I think it would be a little bit more comfortable for me to see that move on to like how maybe guitars are, where there's like, yeah, there's all that shit you can buy, but honestly, you just figure it out with a guitar and an amp. You can probably do something pretty good with it, I really want. I think the DIY method is so pervasive amongst the rest of the community. I don't see why it should be a problem that is in the controllers, right? It just doesn't make sense to me. And like, I'm going to be super frank, I don't like Cody. I don't like Cody one bit. I've seen the shit that he and people around him get up to, right? Don't like him one bit. I'll shit on him for using Z-Jump, but at the end of the day, I personally, with my beliefs on the accessibility, I can't say that there's anything wrong with it, right? I just can't, So I think I just really want to see the community take that aspect of it a little more seriously. So what do you want? Do you want accessibility? How do you want the accessibility to be defined? How do you want an even playing field to be defined? What do you want this to act like? What do you actually want? Because we've already modified the game with the universal controller fix, and I'm going to be super frank. The universal controller fix is bigger than any of the controller discussion combined. I'm going to be super frank with you, because that's not only affecting every single controller that's going to play the game, bar none. It's also a static modification to the game, which is one of the things that Nintendo is always quote unquote angry about. I think Nintendo is really comfortable making money off Melee, and they'll keep it. I don't think it's ever actually in danger. I think it does make enough money for them to deal with whatever issues they feel come from the community. But so I don't have a big issue with a lot of that. But at the end, they didn't want the frozen Pokemon Stadium, right? So But yeah, that's one of the things that I think I just want to see that aspect more of it, a bigger aspect of that, because to me, what the controller discourse should be most impactful for is people at the beginning of the game and people at the end of the game, at the top level, right? Starting out and at the end, because that's going to be the most amount of time. That's going to be the time when it's the most impactful. If you start playing and if you start practicing on an instrument, and the first instrument you get is a really nice instrument, I'm not saying that you know, I've started pretty much all of my shit on like crap, but I also know that if you start on something that works well, works how it's supposed to, is easy to use, has a good smooth feel to it, you're probably going to get a lot better a lot sooner, just because you're using something that you don't have to contort yourself or push yourself to find a way that it actually makes sense. It's just kind of works out of the box, right? Or at least it kind of does something that it's supposed to do out of the box, as opposed to going to a musical round or some other used music store, doing what I did, which was kit bash a bunch of shit together to make a guitar that sort of worked. And you know, it's just troll on Marketplace and stuff like that too. I think that should still, I mean, I think both things should be really valid for people, because most people are not going to be able to afford a really nice controller, as much as I'm going to always say Spark's praise. Don't let me say anything wrong about it, but people aren't always going to be able to have access to that kind of stuff. So when you talk about like the accessibility of like, or when you talk about like ease of use, or like notches are bad because of this, you know, well, there's someone who's playing with something that's effectively tournament legal, that's made out of cardboard and probably has pizza grease on it, right? I don't buy that. You know, I don't like notches because I play Pikachu. I think they're kind of silly, but once you have the box effectively okayed, you can't really go back from that. And I don't think there's going to be a situation, and I think, Suki, you're probably going to agree with me right away, I don't think there's a situation where we're going to just have boxes, just have GameCube controllers, right? That doesn't make any fucking sense. Because we're not going to cut the fob market out, right? That doesn't make sense. And that's also not fair to fob users, because fob is ideally the closest to the OEM, right? So I just think the community has to be a little bit more realistic about what its actual... Oh, yeah. One issue I don't like with the old Melee scene is the M2K controller scenario, where he had over 30 working controllers just because of small stuff. I can show image if you don't know what I mean. I do know what you mean. If you want to drop the image, I can put it up. But I think if you're talking about what I think it's like, where he had, like, this is my Cat and Falcon controller, and this is like my, you know, and M2K is going to be pretty stuffy with it, but that was okay, so there was another issue with controllers where, just 1 second here. I need to hydrate. Damn, dude. There's another time, the story that I always think of that to me kind of like pushes home the controller issue is Armada at one of the Genesises. Basically, Armada showed up to the tournament, and he had been talking about this before, so I do think there's a bit of theatrics on his part involving this particular situation, but he showed up to the tournament and said, all right, the controller that I'm using broke or something, it wasn't working. Does anybody have a controller that I can use? And what's interesting to note about this is this is pre-UCF, and there's a reason why UCF was added afterwards. Yeah, so just if you want a comparison, there is probably a hour-plus long video where he explains why he has each of the different ones. And the other thing too, before UCF, to get a decent controller, to get a decent quality controller, was kind of a crapshoot, because there was some controllers and it was like it's like a percent of a percent, right? It's a pretty small amount. It's like 0.9% of the controllers had the defect or something. It might even be lower than that too. It's rare. And it was one of those things where you were kind of lucking into it. You know, you'd buy, I know for me, I would buy a random silver one from a GameStop, and it would work great, and everybody would be like, wow, this is one of the nicest controllers I've ever used. And you didn't really know why. It just kind of was good. And a lot of the discussion around controllers, I remember before UCF came around, people would be talking about the controllers like they would be infusing them with dark magic to make them work. I mean, I really, like, if you were at a local at like 2014, 2015, before that stuff happened, you'd hear people talking about the controllers and you'd just be like, I can shield drop to the left really well, but to the right, there's issues at this particular. So I did X, and I did all, and people would just be putting so much work into making something just just to be keeping that even playing field. So finally, Armada shows up at the tournament, says, "Oh no, my controller is broken. What am I to do?" And then he goes, and actually literally puts out on Twitter, "Hey, does anybody have a controller that I can use at Genesis?" Now, I mean, I don't know, I wasn't there, but I know if, and I am a little bit of an Armada fan, but even not being a fan, I can imagine the rank and file person at the Genesis would probably cut off their own hand to let Armada to like know that Armada won a tournament on their controller, right? So the story that I had heard was that he ended up testing about 900 to 1,000 controllers. That was what I had heard, and he said none of them were what he wanted. None of them were good enough. DQs from the tournament, does commentary. I think my understanding, he still put the work into like try and make stuff right, but basically he DQ'd and said, we need to do something to standardize this because this is insane. This is completely ridiculous. And I want to make it clear how many controllers. I'm going to pull that picture up again of Mewtwo King. So this is a conservative estimate, 40 controllers probably? Somewhere around 40, maybe 50. So 8 or 9 times this many, right? That's how many controllers he tested. And none of them were up to the standard that he wanted, right? So you got to understand, and this is at the time the #1 player in the world. Unequivocally, no question, #1 guy, DQing because of the controller issue. So no one wants that. So, lo and behold, Practical Task, I believe is the name. I honestly, I don't know who, if I'm giving credit to the wrong people, I apologize. I don't know how a lot of this got figured out, but basically I believe it was Practical Task and a couple of other prominent backroom members said, okay, well, we're going to work on a modification for the game then, so everybody's controller basically works. Because that's not, as the kids say, that ain't it, right? That's not good. It's not, so, and I think credit to Armada for doing this, because I do genuinely think that he did this to make the game more accessible, and I felt like he did make a lot of choices like that. Whether you want to credit him or not, up to you. I think it was a good choice, but yeah. So what ended up happening is, and it basically made it so. There's 1 or 2 other things that add, but basically, what would happen is if you'd be dashing back from just standing like that, you would lose the input sometimes, or sometimes it wouldn't work, or sometimes you'd get a turnaround, or sometimes you just get a weird, like you just start walking or something like that. A lot of different weird little random issues with it, and every controller would be different. There would also be a thing where with shield drops, as shield drops became more popular in the game, starting around 2014, 2015, some controllers could not do shield drops due to just the way that they were made, and how some of the analog sticks worked around, because it's a pretty precise input to, you're kind of sneaking past the shield to do a drop past the shield. It's goofy Melee stuff. Melee is kind of a complicated game to explain sometimes, but yeah, and obviously, yeah, I'll get to that in a second. But yeah, like, so that's why they added UCF, and that's why that became a standard thing, was because 99% of the people really couldn't play this game at the proper high level, right? And after UCF came out, a lot of the discussion among controllers really changed, because it became much more definitive at that point. It wasn't a situation where you would go into a local and you would be talking to some dude and he'd be like, okay, I can use my left trigger to do it, but I also have to shift my C stick. I mean, I literally, you heard some crazy stuff. And that's why it was added, and it made a really big difference for a lot of reasons. But I also think then that, to me, that kind of states what the priority should be, you know, because that was done to make the game more accessible for everybody. And kind of where I lead into with the idea of making it so people don't have to be getting all these controllers to find something that works. And then what Suki is saying, I think what a lot of people forget is people say Boxer Fobs pay to win, but so is a good OEM, or even a decent OEM for that matter, depending on what character you play. Also, like, I mean, like, basically, yeah, like I was saying, not everybody's going to be able to afford a Spark controller, right? Honestly, not everybody's going to be able to afford, like, going to their GameStop and getting a controller, right? And I think at the end of the day, at the top level, I'm assuming the quality is fairly similar across the board. People wouldn't use it, right? I'm assuming at the top level, right? So, you know, paying for a good OEM, paying for a good fob, paying for a good box, you know, to me, it's the same advantage, right? Paying for a really good, just because it's just always about the money, right? And then the other thing too, then, like, from that, like, I've heard, you know, some people will say a good box or a good fob costs $500, right? And, you know, you'll hear, again, it's a lot of questions about that, and because UCF is kind of the idea of, like, let's make it so that doesn't have to be a problem. And I think fobs were partly started because there was some concern of Nintendo, like, reducing stuff too, but again, to me, fobs are about accessibility, right? Because I think there's also, I know you can get fob kits that are not nearly as expensive as even a imported, a vanilla out of the box imported OEM, forgetting what Spark would do to it, or anybody else, any other modder would do to it, right? And then the other thing that I would kind of consider with that would just be, like, ease of ability. Like, I do think, oh shit, put the music back on here. I do think too, like, being able to modify something, you know, not everybody's gonna have a controller person in the town, and just, I know this is kind of a dumb, you know, because if you've worked on controllers, you understand that a lot of these modifications are actually really simple and pretty painless to do, but a lot of people aren't going to have the ability to modify their own controllers for whatever reason. Whatever reason, just it is something that is going to be a factor as well. So how is that going to be an effect, right? Like, if it's, does everybody need these heartbreak capacitors? So. I might be wrong, but fobs started because they thought they needed an open source version of Broomwave, which was almost never being made because it was made by one guy or a few guys. Yeah, Broomwave was a different GameCube controller board that people had been using around the time fobs started, but eventually, because the firmware, as Suki is saying, wasn't open source, basically he could kind of do whatever he wanted to it without issue, without anybody, like, really looking into the code or looking into the firmware. So they ended up being banned just because they were a cheating risk at that point. You can't, if accessibility is also going to have to mean that people can probably look at the stuff that you're using, because it doesn't really make any sense otherwise, right? And if you're uncomfortable with that, like, what are you hiding in your controller that would cause problems with that? So I know, like, Axe used to use Groomwave, and then he had to stop doing that. Actually, the controller I was talking about, the fancy one that Plup got, was actually a Groomwave board, which I thought was kind of funny, because I think the video was finished right after Groomwaves had been banned or something too, so it was kind of just bad timing on the unlucky timing, I should say, for the video editors, but yeah. So that, I don't know. So I don't have a strong conclusion to come to. I don't have any big, I don't have a big sweeping statement to make about this, basically because it's not really my place to. It would have to be something the community would have to effectively decide. Because I think that is kind of, at the end of the day, how the community has figured stuff out too, is with the entirety of the controller conversation, I feel like people should be speaking up pretty frequently about it, especially lower level players, new people, whatever. I think people should be talking about it a lot because it's, like I said, it's affecting people at the bottom and at the very top the most. You're either new to the game, trying to figure out what's good and what doesn't work. And at the top level, you need the absolute best thing. Yeah, we need people to, people will always disagree, but we need people to disagree to find the correct solution. And I definitely agree with that. And one of the things I am kind of happy to see is the controller conversation itself it stays pretty technical. Like, I don't see a lot of, like, genuine, I feel like most of the people who are at the top that discuss it, at least publicly how it's discussed, it feels like it's being discussed in a pretty reasonable way. But I never really see any conclusions being drawn, and that's what always kind of bothers me. It would just be kind of nice if we could hear from them, what do they want the controllers to do? Because it's like, what it sounds silly, but like, what do people want the interface that we use to say about us as players? That is kind of what's going to have to happen at the end of the day. Because I think the cat's out of the bag. I think notches are here to stay. I'm going to be super frank with you. I think notches are here to stay. I think most modifications are here to stay. I can see a world where notches get banned, but I don't think it's going to happen. I can't see a world where fobs or anything like that get banned, but, you know, it feels like we're in a little too deep for that, right? And, you know, you see someone like Nez who spends all his time literally doing notches on stream, right? So, so I don't know. I do hope there's a good solution to it. I'm sorry, I'm doing my best to get it good. I should have written some more stuff down. I'll probably do that next time. But yeah, so anyway, those are just some random thoughts that I had on it. Just some arguments that I'd never seen brought up. I think, like, I was trying to think of, like, what would I do if I was in charge? And to be honest, I actually don't really know either, because I don't... I mean, I'm pretty sure what I'm using is never going to be an issue. So in a way, I feel a little bit, like, outside looking in some of the aspects of the conversation, because I'm not someone who's having to worry about fob firmware updates. I'm not someone who's having to worry about box firmware updates, anything like that, right? So for me, then, it's entirely about the identity. It's entirely about the idea of what it means to have people playing fobs and playing boxes. Because again, my personal belief too is that they don't they don't seem to add, again, there are more fobs in top 8, I think, than there are boxes, right? So, like, and Zane is an OEM user, so, and I appreciate the conversation, by the way. We don't seem to disagree on anything, but then again, no offense, we aren't top players. Yeah, exactly. But like, so like talking about that too. So why I wanted to bring this up is because Aklo was saying notches are bad because this, but also the big reason is the wear and tear. Not that it just makes playing on a controller easier, but that it is more wear and tear on the controller, right? Okay, you can drop your controller and it's going to get more wear and tear on it, right? And as a Pikachu player, I think I would find I've played on notched controllers and stuff, and I mean, they're nice. It's nice to be able to like lock into a perfect wave dash, but very frequently I'm not trying to do perfect wave dashes either. And also I have to do stuff like that all the time. And that's kind of difficult with notches. You can get some, I think Axe for a time was using stuff like that, but for me it always seemed like it would be such a huge obstruction. The other thing I think is interesting about notches is that they kind of freeze you into a certain point in the meta, because I think some of those angles and stuff are going to change, and some of those ideas are going to change too. But like, for me it was just really silly, because it was like, you'd see a Falco player and he'd talk about his great notches, right? And he'd go, yeah, see, now I can hit this angle. Oops, sorry. I haven't played Falco in a long time. I'm going to SD and look like a dumbass, but I'm pretty used to it in this community. So, you know, you'd get hit, and you'd get this angle. Something. I'm trying to get something kind of like. I should have practiced it before I started too. Make it easier. Something where you're not jamming it directly into the corner there. You're getting something a little bit saucier. So maybe like that. That's about as smooth as I can get that right now without having practiced it too much. But basically, those are going to be situated like you'd come up to someone and they would say like, yeah, check it out, I could do that. And then after a couple seconds, I could just do it on my own. And that's not to be like a jerk or anything. It's just I was very used to playing characters that required a pretty good understanding of the analog capabilities of the controller. I also found out pretty quickly that things like wave dashes and things like that, there's no one standard wave dash, right? You're always doing a lot of different distances with wave dashes. So having this objectively perfect one that you could always click into just didn't really make any sense to me because I'm not always doing that. So as a Pikachu player, I always thought notches were just a little bit silly, but to me it was always like a let baby have his bottle situation. You know, if you think it helps you, sure, but I can't. It's the same thing with boxes. And you know, if we have a box that's got a program where you can press a button or a simple combination of buttons, not having to worry about an analog input and just get that angle that you want. Doing that organically, quote unquote, on a controller I mean, why is that a problem? You know, I just don't see that doesn't make sense to me. If it's dug that deep into it, and I do respect, again, he's a top player, so you know, I'm sure there's worlds of difference that I'm missing here, but it just doesn't make sense for me to hear that as what the problem is with controller modifications. Because also, I'm going to be honest, as like a player, I'd be like, I mean, I think most spacey players are going to be crazy no matter what I do, right? So I kind of am just like, they're going to do whatever. I'm going to play on my little controller and just practice a lot and figure stuff out, right? No offense to space, it just, a lot of these conversations seem to come from characters in that bracket, right? A lot of these, and you know, they are the top characters that are succeeding at high level in the meta, so obviously they would be, but still. So I kind of feel like the other thing too with controller discourse is that if it's not either you set up a standardized, everybody uses OEMs, everybody uses a fob with this very precise thing, everybody uses a box with a very precise thing, or even reduces it so everybody's just using OEM, which I think is the only real argument you can make at this point, because otherwise there's so many different holes in it. But you could, if you wanted it to be about the purity of the game, then you would have to ban fobs, and that doesn't make sense. And I also think, again, with accessibility, that seems so unfair to people who don't have another way to either get an OEM or get a, you know, if a lot of people are using boxes because they physically cannot handle this controller, which is not, and everybody knows this is not an ergonomic controller. Everybody knows that. Anytime I go into a community that's not Melee, one of the things people always make fun of is that we worship a controller that really isn't practical. I love the GameCube controller. I think it's fun to use, and I definitely know when you're playing Melee, well, you know, you still feel smooth as shit, and it's because of it. I can still admit that this thing hurts. This thing is fucked up my shoulder, right? This thing is fucked up my back. So, like, for real. And everybody knows, and I mean, everybody knows people who have stories of carpal tunnel. If you've seen Cody's hands, you can see the effect that this game has on people. If you're not perfectly taking care of yourself every day, it'll hurt. So the idea that we have to force people to play the game on something that like, I'm super sorry. Like, I know a lot of people are going to try to like sound tough about it, but we know a lot of people who hurt themselves playing this game. Melee is one of the hand stretching metas that we learned about. Like, I feel like I didn't hear a lot about people taking a lot of care of their hands until Melee players started talking a lot about it too. And I think most people, if you're from that era, remember M2K, go to the doctor or something like that too. I don't think you should have to suffer that punishment for playing the game. I don't think that makes sense. I don't think that's very fair. So I don't want to. So for me, then, if that's something that I'm going to say, anyway. So sorry, I got a little distracted, lost my train of thought there. But basically, oh yeah, as someone who thinks GameCube is my favorite controller, yeah, it's flawed, yeah. But I think a big reason I like GameCube more than any controllers, I have big hands. Yeah, I have really big fingers, like bigger than it looks like, I guess. So I remember when I got the Xbox, the original Xbox, the Duke, for the first time, I was like, finally, a controller that feels comfortable. Which I always thought was really funny, because apparently I was very much in the minority for that. And yeah, and I think with a lot of proper practice and stuff, this thing feels amazing. But the thing is, I think the problem is that it takes that proper practice, right? And I don't like the idea of this being a video game that you're gonna like really cause yourself damage if you don't practice. Like, there's a disconnect there that I don't feel makes sense to me. So I feel like that's not what this should really be about. Like, I don't believe that this game should just be about people proving that they can hurt themselves to play a game. And I feel like at the end of the day, anytime you talk about stuff, getting rid of boxes especially, that's kind of what to me, that you're sort of implicitly implying, like, you have to go through this brutal curve, this horrible thing that's broken down so many people, that you have to like practice meditation and you have to do regular stretching on every day to make sure you don't hurt yourself. That doesn't seem right. But then if you keep the boxes there, boxes are basically an open Pandora's box where anything is possible. So that has to go back to the OEM, that has to go back to the fob. So I don't know. So I mean, at this point, I guess I can see the community, like, I guess I just like to see what the focus is and like, what do people actually want then? And then how do you navigate that? Like, if people want the Levin, do people want this? Do people want this to be the game that everybody plays an OEM on because they're so fucking tough? You know, is that what the community wants to have? Because and then you'd be banning fobs. Is that what people want? Do people want the accessibility? Do people want the even playing field? And I just never feel like there's an answer to that yet. So that's kind of why I wanted to make the video. I also do think that one of the perspectives that gets lost is I think the people who are just starting out with the game, just trying to figure things out. I think with the discussion right now, it can be really tough to know what's going to be good or what's not going to be good. Standardizing what makes a decent controller probably would be a good start too. That's one of the reasons I latched on to Spark's controller so quickly. So like, well, okay, this is going to be a very standardized idea of what a decent playing controller is going to be. So yeah, hopefully, if there is a solution, I hope the solution is cheap for everybody. That would be my biggest. That to me would be the solution. Like, I don't really care what the community ends up deciding, just because again, it's not really going to affect me, and because again, it's not really my place to make that decision for how many hundreds of thousands of people play this game. But I do think that at some point in the community is going to have to make that choice for itself. It is going to have to figure out like, that's a good question too. But I think that's one of the things that's going to have to be brought up eventually. But the next question, Suki asks, I wonder how the community would have changed if the Panda controller would have been a thing. And that's a really interesting question. So Panda Global was a very, very prominent Melee sponsor, Melee team. A couple people, I think Plup and Akalo and Wizrobe, I think, were signed to them or something. Maybe Cody, I want to say too. Or I know someone had gotten signed to Panda Global, and then everything went down, and it was one of those like, wow, this just kind of sucks to be this player, because they could never, like, nothing they landed on ever sat with them, which makes you think. It actually makes me think it's Wizrobe, but Panda Global had it was a very influential team. I don't know. I think it's like team or company or franchise. I think. Really, really big. I think pretty popular too. at the point that everything went down, they were responsible for the global Melee rankings, right? So they were pretty deep into the community at this point. And when Nintendo had actually offered to do a officiated circuit, they went to the guys from Panda Global, and I think VGBC Bootcamp as well. But I think the Panda Global guys were the big. That was the big bridge that Nintendo had built. And what had ended up happening is the head owner of Panda Global was such a terrible person, was so poisonously toxic to everybody involved with that. I don't know if this was something, it probably was in his character beforehand, because that's what happens with these kind of types, but eventually Nintendo themselves canceled the event because the working relationship was so bad with this guy that they couldn't even trust him. They felt like they were losing money. They felt like things were being delivered. I know some people have some issues with VGC Bootcamp, but I do basically trust what he said about the situation, and he had a pretty long write-up about it, where he basically said that they screwed the pooch on it, that Panda Global had been the big issue. And it had been it would be a situation where Nintendo would go to Panda Global and say, like, okay, these people want to have officiated events, and Panda Global would say, well, don't let them do that. Don't let VGC Bootcamp have their events. Don't let them be part of this world tour. That kind of shit. And I mean, I don't know where the exact break happens. I haven't read the article for a bit, but basically that's happened. But one of the things Panda was talking about was making essentially a perfect, it was like ergonomic too, like it was going to be an ergonomically designed, they had a patent for it and everything, ergonomically designed game controller. Near the end of their life cycle, they were talking about rolling that out. Like I think they had production models and stuff too. And unfortunately they folded, well, unfortunately, for better or for worse, they ended up folding before that could really be anything more than just kind of hot air. But if that had been a thing, I honestly don't know. I feel my gut. The first thing that I thought when I read that, when you wrote that down, was it would basically just be another fob situation. I think the controller would have to be really, really, like, not just good, but like you have a swath of every top player basically saying, no, I should have been playing on this the whole time. I think if that doesn't happen, I don't think a whole lot would have changed initially. And I'm also like, what you're saying is we would have to believe the promises about Panda that Panda had given about the controller, right? And that's kind of like, it's kind of like I have to start the conversation. I have to answer your first question by saying, well, to be honest, before we actually answer it, I don't know if what they were promising was ever something they could deliver based on what had happened. So that's the first thing that I'm going to say. But going by what you're saying, because we don't know. We just honestly, and we're never going to know. So if it had actually been a thing, I do think it would have just been like another controller type too. The other thing too is it could have been like super expensive, which would not have surprised me that much. If this was also $200 at that point, why not just get the OEM? Like, why not just get the OEM? Why not get the fob? Why not get the box, right? So not knowing what the air quality, by the way, is still bad. Sometimes I'll take the mask off and my eyes start burning a little bit, so that's why it's coming on and off. But at that point, like, is it really gonna? What impact would it have made? So I think for me personally, yeah, I would have to say probably just another addition to the market, based on kind of like what's happened with any type of thing that's been rolled out consecutively, because that's kind of been like, okay, hey, fobs. No, fobs didn't really replace OEMs. It's just another option. Here's boxes. Well, boxes didn't really replace OEMs. It's just another option. I feel like that would probably be the Panda thing, and that there would be a ton of people who, out of pride, would never use that thing. Just as a matter of course, right? So I don't know. I think it's going by the promises that they had made. I think it would have been a new standard, right? Because it would be an easy way to play the game that's ergonomic, that basically is the same as a game controller. Do you want to believe those promises? That's the other tough thing too, because there's a lot of if wishes were horses in the community kind of thing, and where you draw the line at that is kind of tough, because you have to look at that optimism and that enthusiasm and say, well, here's what has happened before, here's what we've seen before. So those are that would. It's an interesting idea, and it does feel like I would say because Panda Global folded, and then also Golden Guardians folded in the same year for other reasons. Oh yeah. Fair. I don't remember much from the period of time because I low-key quit Melee from fear of my time being wasted from Nintendo. COVID, yeah. COVID days, not my best mindset. I understand that completely. And that was a weird time too, because I think Slippy was had come out kind of recently, and people, I know when I first heard about it, I was like, man, Nintendo's gonna shit. We're done. The game's done. When I first heard about Slippy, because I was just like, they're not gonna let this happen, right? A full leaderboard, right? Come on. So I definitely can see why you would say that too. And it was a couple of, and it's been a pretty hectic amount of years, and Melee, that's a scene that moves fast, right? These conversations change really consistently. But yeah, I know a lot of people were really, and especially after, a lot of people, regardless of what Panda's involvement in the controversy was, a lot of people were still pissed off at Nintendo. It didn't really matter. The guy from Global could have blown up a building, and people still would have pointed at Nintendo and said, "This is your fault." Like, it doesn't really matter. And I understand that too. But that is the perspective that people, and I think it's gotten better. It seems to ebb and flow depending on when Nintendo like releases a theme park or a new movie or something. But I do kind of believe that it's like just kind of like, I think if they wanted to stop it, they would have stopped it with Slippy completely. So I do feel kind of comfortable, but yeah, a lot of there was definitely it's almost like every other year it seems like Nintendo goes like makes all these moves and then backs out immediately, after doing a little bit of damage. So that's not a completely unreasonable feeling to have. But yeah, so I don't think I have too many other thoughts on the subject aside from that. I guess the TLDR, basically accessibility is for me the most important thing. That includes financial accessibility. So maybe having a good baseline for what makes a good controller and working around that, as opposed to saying OEMs are the best, FOBs are the best, but kind of keeping a lot of the really specifics kind of vague. Because I know that was one of the issues with Z-Jump, was when the Z-Jump topic came up, it was really hard to find a video where people were just talking about, here's the practical reality of what, I think that was one of the terms I used, was here's a practical reality of using Z-Jump, right? Like, what does that actually mean? Because a lot of people, a lot of the people in the community speak from the gut. So basically just saying, like, fundamentally, maybe what is a good controller? What do we want things to do? And it's not that it's that when you talk about what do they want them to do, I mean, like, if you have notches, you have boxes. Like, I think it doesn't, it doesn't make sense to me any other way. So how does that work? TLDR, I love people playing Melee. Yeah, no, I think that's kind of what I'm just saying. I think just keep Melee as accessible as possible. However that would mean. So if that means standardizing the controller, if that means, I hope it doesn't mean, if it means removing boxes and fobs, I mean, I'm not going to be happy with that. I don't think that's fair to anybody. So yeah, I'd say TLDR, I just want to see a little bit of consistency with the discussion on it. Like, what are I think the community needs stated goals about what they want from performance from people, and then a really nice, like, this is what those goals are. This is what we should be doing. I think it's got to start from OEM, but having said that, it seems like you can. I've heard it's like super specific, character specific tech that seems to be locked behind boxes. Otherwise, it's not that. I don't know. It doesn't seem like there's that much to it. So that would be my thing. Is just I want to see a little bit more. Like, what do we want? What do we all actually want to have happen? So those are kind of my thoughts on it. Yeah, and I think for me, my perspective, and I kind of been saying this too, is just the most people that can be playing this game should be playing this game. That to me is the most important thing. So however we can do that, where top players don't feel like they're getting cheated out of a win anytime someone shows up with a bunch of little notches someone did on their plastic. you know, that's I feel like that's gonna have to be a start eventually, because we haven't even really got to the start of the baselines yet. It's still just, I think notches are bad because it makes more wear and tear on controller. All right, well, I mean, buttons were down too. I don't know what to tell you, dude. So anyway, cool thoughts about that. About an hour and a half of random rambling. There's probably something editable in there, but I doubt that I'm gonna have the interest in looking through that video. But yeah, just some thoughts I wanted to talk about. It's just been kind of bugging me that I always feel like accessibility kind of gets left behind, or the financial aspects of it get left behind after a while too. And I think that's I don't feel like that's a super controversial opinion. I think people just have an issue contextualizing what that would mean in the context of this current debate. So hopefully there's this, again, to me the solution, I just want, my dream would just be, honestly, I guess my dream would kind of be the Panda Global Controller, you know, something that works, that doesn't hurt, that everybody agrees is legal. So yeah. All right, I talked for a lot longer than I thought I was gonna. And Suki is here, and Suki seems to have kept track of what I said, so I'm gonna assume it wasn't that terrible. I'm gonna pour some water and take a little bit of a break here. I just kind of went off there. That kind of time kind of flew away from me. But I don't know. I'm gonna give Mono some content too, right? So, but I appreciate he can steal my talking points. I don't care. He knows that. So, but yeah. And also kind of shout out to him doing his interview with Swift today. Kind of got me wanting to just do this little talk through. So I'm assuming like maybe 5 people are actually going to see this and listen to all of it anyway. So I'm not super worried about the complete effect it's going to have on the community. And yeah, but like the other thing is I don't have any. If people want to play me on a GameCube, people want to play me on a Guitar Hero control and they beat me. I don't really care what people play against with me. I think the game's just too hard. I really do think the game is just too hard. It just doesn't matter. Yeah, so I'll start that break off. Thanks everybody for being here, by the way. I see we have 17 views on this, so I'm assuming people thought this was going to be more interesting than it was. DK Bong was for the one. Yes, I think didn't Axe have to scream into it to do like to do one of the inputs as well, or something like that too. And I knew some people. I knew one of the guys who made like the duet where he had his girlfriend sit on his lap and they were playing the game together on one controller thing. Because I remember they had gotten featured on the stream as like the first match of a tournament or something, and it was just kind of cool to see him there. But I mean, if that's also like something like no one's got a real. I mean the standards have to be same at low level as they do at high level, right? Because I feel like at low level no one really cares too much about what Scream equals shield. Oh my god, that is the worst thing Scream could be too. That is hilarious. He's quieter, and the quieter he is, the more of a light shield is. That's super funny. But yeah, so I think we can all agree the ideal is a world where we have to yell at our controllers to make the shields come out. I think that's the best thing that we can be doing. Yeah, I'm gonna take this quick break here. I'm probably gonna play some unranked here and see. I might try some ranked. Has been I can do like one ranked game and then I have to stop for 15 minutes because I get really invested in it. So I'm and ranked on ranked when you're streaming is a responsibility. It's very important for me to be respectful of other people. OEM with a microphone, yeah, right. OEM like one of those the Dreamcast controllers, right? But it's really important for me to be respectful and not get super tilted when I stream, because I don't, as a matter of course, I don't really like talking shit about other people. I know, hard to believe, right? It's a real shock, but I do try to value some humility and respectfulness. So I'm always working towards that, which is also why I'm playing the game. So playing ranked can I'm not sure where I'm at playing ranked with a microphone in front of me. I'm not sure how much work that's going to be to where I could be really comfortable with it. But I'm going to still work on it. And at the end of the day, I do want to have this be a stream where I'm playing ranked pretty much all the time too. So, all right, I'm gonna take that break quick. Let's get back. I'm gonna leave the music on. Probably 5 or 10 minutes. We'll see. Oops. Oh, I left the mic on. I am a smart person. I got a little bit of water here. Ha! Yeah. I don't think I said anything creepy. If I made some weird noises, I make weird noises by myself sometimes. Sorry about that. The camera is the one I get scared about. But thank you for letting me know, Suki. I appreciate that. Anyways, now I thought it would be fun to get into some gaming here. Also, just one other thought before I appreciate that. Just one other thought before I don't want to sound like I'm being too critical of Aklo, because I feel like Aklo, when he's saying I don't want notches, it's not just about that. I think it's implied that there's more going on than that. So even though I disagree with his reasoning, I think he's not like he's allowed to say that, but like I see where that's coming from, and I don't really like. It's kind of why I also wanted to, like I said, make the video, just because I think there needs to be that standardization, so we don't have someone feel like they have to say this is why I think this is bad because it's giving an advantage or something like that. Anyway, okay. Be nice to everybody, please. So we're gonna try to do some little warms here. I reached silver with Ganon, and I'm extremely happy with myself. But having done that, I felt the call of the Pikachu. The other thing is I had really built up the amount of effort it would take. Dang it. Here, we're gonna have to slow stuff down a little bit here. My hands are moving too fast. The other thing is I also... Thank you. I feel a little embarrassed how proud of myself I am for that. But it was so hard with Ganon. It's really just a lot of work. The first couple times I queued into rank with Ganon, I was like, this is bad. This is not a smart idea. But yeah, so when I kind of got my head together, also this gaming chair is, I like, my back just doesn't hurt anymore, so I'm in a better place to be playing this right now. But since that happened, it's just been a lot easier to move around, and what ended up happening is getting silver rank with Ganon took, I thought it was going to take like a week, and it ended up taking only a few days. And there was a point when I kind of just stopped losing, which was nice. Not to toot my own horn, just more like the work that I put into it, something clicked and it's finally started paying off, or just I was taking a little bit better care of myself, but suddenly the game just became a little bit easier to manage. So it was a good feeling. It was a pretty nice feeling. But I think the Pikachu is unfortunately the muse. I'm only really playing Ganon as a... I mean, I do legitimately love the character, but it's as much about making fun of Ganon, of old school Ganon players, as it is experiencing that. So Pikachu is the passion, I guess. Oops. It's gonna take me. Sorry. I haven't played this on stream in a minute. So I thought probably what's going to be the plan is with one character I'm going to go to like, so I'm going to try to go with gold with Pikachu now, gold is tough. Gold is really tough, so I'm a little bit nervous about that, but that is the goal. Go to gold with Pikachu and then do the same with Ganon and then repeat. Just see how high I can take it. I'm pretty sure that if you're talking to me in 2 years and I hit Grandmaster, something went wrong. I have to be really honest with you. I don't see... Like, I love this game. I want to have as much success with it as possible. But I don't see a future where things went perfectly for me that I'm like a Grandmaster in this game. Whatever you want to take from that, that's it's up to you. But yeah, and then just kind of leapfrog between the two of them. I appreciate that. But mostly, more than anything else, have fun, work on self-control. just push myself to improve and succeed, because I haven't. I promised myself when I found a place that I could live in that was basically doable for me, I would do the best that I could to give it a real shot. Now, I first said that to myself 5 years ago when I was still in my like 20s, so things were a little bit easier then, and there were a lot less aches and pains. But I mean, I'm not dead yet, so. I don't know how many. I don't think it should be an issue where my hands only have so many years left to play the game. I think you can see Russian pianists who are like 80 who can still play fairly virtuistically. So I'm assuming you can probably play this game for your whole life, but I do wonder sometimes if there is going to be a point when it, if there is like a legitimate burnout that you just can't. Like, everybody's got their amount of hours they can put into Melee before they give up. Super random thoughts now. Not trying to be especially thoughtful anymore. Okay, let's one thing at a time here. I'm getting a little overexcited. I was super hyper all day. I got a new air purifier delivered. I've been taping up the apartment a bunch. I feel really bad having some of the issues I've been having. I'm really trying to fix this stuff on there because I don't really want to be stepping. I don't know. I just feel kind of bad. I'm trying to make stuff work here, where I don't got to be interacting with anybody. But it's still kind of tough. We'll see. But got a new air purifier, so I'm really happy about that. The old one that I was using before, it's lasted about a month, and it's already really it's gray and worn. It looks pretty rough, and it should have lasted like 3 months, so I'm a little bit nervous about that.